I did get deployed with the Army as a dentist, so that was a unique experience, which I know a lot of our Colorado Springs people can relate to. That sort of tempo of military families and that sort of things. Just actually start a practice from scratch. So 0 patients, just set up shop, what we used to say, kind of hang a tile out front and hope people showed up. And so did that in '08. You have that impact and you see the transformation. And it's kind of like a light goes off.
Welcome back to the COS Business Podcast, #1 podcast in Colorado Springs.
Today, our highlighted sponsor is Be Our Guest Getaways. Check them out and to book your Disney vacation.
Excellent. Well, today we have a very special guest, Dr. Andrew Hall with the Studio for Exceptional Dentistry. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me here. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We're super pumped to have you. We haven't had a single general dentist on our show yet, so this will be a fascinating episode. But start it from the beginning. Where you went to school, how you got into dentistry first and foremost, and then we can kind of go into your story of opening up the studio, which has been around for quite some time now.
Yeah, we have been around for quite some time now. It's hard to believe. But my backstory, I grew up in Florida, actually, so I'm not a Colorado native. But I did all my formal training down in Florida. So my undergraduate, and then I went up to the University of Florida and did my dental school training there. Then I actually owed the Army some time. They had paid for some of my undergrad studies. So I was shipped over to Hawaii, which wasn't a bad duty station. Did a 1-year residency there, actually. So another year of training, if you will. It's kind of some advanced training in dentistry. Putting into practice what you've learned in dental school, right? Because in dental school, they're just making safe beginners. I mean, that's really their job, is just to get people out that aren't going to hurt people and that are going to be safe beginners. And then it's up to you to kind of ramp up your speed, your knowledge base, your background on what you want to do specifically. Is there a lane you want to focus on? So that was a great experience because it kind of gave me the ability to dive deep into even the official specialties, if you will, of dentistry, and to learn a lot about those. Then I served for a few years. I did get deployed with the Army as a dentist. So that was a unique experience. So I did spend a year over in Iraq, which I know a lot of our Colorado Springs people can relate to, that sort of tempo of military families and that sort of thing. So I can relate to that, having served, deployed, come home, done all those sorts of things. And at that point, I decided to separate from the Army. Everybody always asks, well, how'd you end up in Colorado Springs? Everybody just assumes that, you were stationed here because you were in the Army and that sort of thing. Not really. I just had a good friend who was stationed here several times, who I was deployed with. And he had always said, you should check out, like, if you're not hard set on going back to Florida, why don't you check out Colorado, and just kind of gave a few places. And at that point, I was just trying to find a place to kind of land and see what it was like. Nothing was really drawing me back to Florida. So I still have some family there, but it's not like I had in dentistry. Oftentimes it's generational. And I mean that by like saying it's like dad practices, then son practices, or brothers. And they practice together. And I didn't have that. So it wasn't like I was going back to a practice that was already established or anything like that. So came out here, looked around, kind of looked here in Boulder and Denver and kind of everywhere between, from the Springs north, if you will, and then settled in the Springs, like we were kind of talking about, where up north, where it was at that point, it was just kind of starting to take off. But it was, I liked the feel of it. There was a lot of good stuff, a lot of good growth up there. So that's where I kind of settled, was up on that part of town.
We'd like to take a quick break and thank our sponsors.
Bolton Co. Executive Coaching. Up feels better than stuck. You know that. But in this market, how do you get unstuck and get ahead as an executive?
Our guy, JB, is an executive coach at Bolton Co. Coaching, where he believes you don't have to change who you are. You just need an injection of effectiveness and a proven competitive edge roadmap for your way up. Head to boltonco.net. That's boltonco.net.
ProLift Garage Doors.
ProLift Garage Doors are your locally owned and operated residential and commercial garage door experts. From fast repairs and smooth replacements to routine tune-ups, they keep your doors running like new.
Go with the pros at ProLift Garage Doors.
Visit proliftdoors.com to learn more. Be Our Guest Getaways. Be Our Guest Getaways specializes in Disney Cruise Resort and theme park vacations.
Planning a Disney vacation can be stressful. Let Be Our Guest Getaways provide you with concierge-level service for free.
Learn more at beourguestgetaways.com. That's beourguestgetaways.com.
Planet Duct. Planet Duct is the #1 choice for professional air duct cleaning in Colorado Springs and Southern Colorado. With state-of-the-art equipment and top-tier service, they make sure the air in your home or business is clean and allergen-free. Breathe easier with Planet Duct. Learn more at planetduct.com.
Awesome Home Services. Awesome Home Services delivers top-notch HVAC solutions for your home. Whether you need heating, cooling, or system maintenance, they ensure your comfort year-round. Visit awesomeservice.com for your HVAC needs. That's awesomeservice.com.
Mike Schoening Legal Shield.
So you're out here living your best life and suddenly legal drama slides in your DMs. Major L, right?
Bruh, hard pass. That's why you need Legal Shield. They're like the GOAT of legal protection.
Business contracts covered. Traffic tickets, no sweat. 3 a.m. legal emergency, they're up like, say less.
Hit up the link and get Legal Shield now.
Protect your energy, secure the bag, and stay drama-free, period.
Visit mscheoeng.legalshieldassociate.com.
Proud American Electrical and Solar.
Give Proud American Electrical and Solar a call today for all your electrical and solar needs. They are locally owned and operated business right here in Colorado Springs. If you're looking for information on solar, this is the company you will want to call. Check out their website at proudamericansolar.com. Use promo code COSBusiness for a 5% discount today.
Pinnacle Advanced Primary Care.
Pinnacle Advanced Primary Care offers affordable, accessible healthcare with a focus on you. They provide exceptional primary care without the hassle of insurance barriers. Experience a patient-centered approach. Learn more at pinnacleapc.com.
And now let's get back to the show. Yeah, and it's grown so much, like you said. My family moved up there in 03. I think you said 05, and then you opened up in 08. Is that correct?
Right. So I moved to Colorado in 05, and then I did associate with a practice here just because, again, I didn't know. I mean, I knew nobody in Colorado Springs. I mean, literally nobody. And I had coordinated just to kind of do some interviews through actually a dental company that would help, we were talking about like sales of materials and this, that, and the other. It was like a rep that was consulting, and he would say, hey, I know these practices that are good. Maybe you should talk to these guys, that sort of thing. Because again, it's tough when you don't know the lay of the land. You don't know anybody to even go, hey, is this a good practice that I'm going into? Is this not a good practice that I'm going into? That sort of thing. So I was fortunate I did land as an associate. Just again, I wanted to spend some time to figure out if it was the right time or the right place, I should say, before laying down deep roots, if you will. So I did that for a few years. Then I kind of made that personal decision of, do I partner with this guy? That was his primary intention, was to have me come on as a partner, or do I kind of branch off and do what they don't do a lot of nowadays, is just actually start a practice from scratch. So 0 patients, just set up shop, what we used to say, kind of hang a tile out front and hope people showed up. And so did that in 08. So that was, it took a little time to plan, ramp up the build out, all that sort of stuff. But then we opened in 08 and been there ever since. So it's hard to believe it's been that long.
That's insane. So the studio was completely your own name.
Yeah. It was my brainchild, if you will. We just kind of wanted it to be a little different, right? That was my whole goal, was it was to be not your typical dental office. You didn't want it to smell like a dental, people have certain triggers of dental offices if and I don't mean that in a bad way. So it was designed to feel a little different, the name to be a little different. We were just trying to, even before I knew kind of what branding was, and now I think it's a lot more popular because people are trying to brand themselves on social media. They're trying to do all that sort of stuff.
Right.
I guess we were still trying to do that even from the get go. So that's kind of how we started.
Gosh. How did you? I'm sure you just got out of school, so you probably had like student debt and stuff. How did you fund the venture?
Well, for the practice itself, So like I said before, I was actually fairly fortunate because the Army had paid for my undergraduate studies. So I had debt from dental school, which is enormous. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I had cut some of that down. I don't know how some of these new grads today do it with the amount of debt that they come out with, just with the rising cost of education in general.
Right.
And then, so starting a practice, at least traditionally in dentistry, it's a pretty safe investment. So most banks actually have a separate department that deals just with like dental practices or veterinarian practices or something like that. So they'll have a few key people that you can connect with, and but I in that time, because that was pre-recession, right? That was because when we were getting the fund, when we were getting all the funding online and all that sort of stuff, it was pre-recession. And at that time, money was flowing pretty easy, right? The people were lending, but even traditionally, like I said, banks were because dental businesses are pretty fail safe, I guess, investment for them. You don't see a lot, and you don't see a lot of like dental practices that are just closing up shop and boarding their windows, right? Most of them do okay,
pretty much.
yeah, for the most part. Yeah, I mean,
if your tooth hurts, you're gonna want to do something about it.
Right. It depends on if it's need based, wants based. What's your motivating factor? Pain, health, aesthetics, whatever it is, like that sort of thing. But yeah,
it makes sense. And then so, when you first opened up the studio, was it like general dentistry that you opened up and that was like your primary service? Or did you kind of branch into like the cosmetic side a little bit later on down the road?
Yeah, that's a great question. Looking back on, I definitely had to pay the bills by doing the general dentistry, right? And I didn't know what I really wanted to do, right? Like I said, I'd had some, kind of exposure in the Army, but I'd always known that I wanted to try to do the aesthetics thing and do the cosmetic part of it. But it's a challenge because it is more elective. It isn't, it is more wants based type of approach. So yeah, early on, I was still doing a lot of general dentistry. I still enjoy a lot of digital general dentistry. This is the way I like to practice. It's the way I've always practiced. And then I also had to broaden my knowledge base. So I needed to go out and educate myself on how to do these cosmetic cases, how to learn how to handle these situations, get the experience, get the training. Because again, you're not given that in dental school. You don't get to do, a set of 10 or 20 veneers in dental school. I mean, you're lucky in dental school if you get to do maybe one veneer or one front crown. Because they're just trying to make it so that you're, the basics and you can help people do, get what they need, but they're not they're not in there talking about, this is how you handle this or how you work about the translucency of this material or the shade of this material, or these are the photos you have to take. And this is all the process. We don't get that. So you have to kind of go seek that knowledge with some continuing education. So I had to do a lot of that initially as well. And make sure that I was versed enough that I could handle the cases when the patients did want that. And then you just kind of slowly, one case leads to another case, and you get this kind of slow momentum of a snowball effect of things.
Yeah. That's awesome. If someone was to be like a shadow, like your shadow for next week, walk us through like what they would be going through as they're kind of following you around in your day to day.
Yeah. So my day to day, I mean, a lot of it's still, I mean, I'm in the clinic, 3 or 4 days a week. So it's not like I'm not working. I'm still hands-on a lot. I still, in some aspects, because I have friends who are pure aesthetics where they still don't have any hygiene department. They don't have hygienists in their practice or stuff like that. Because just mostly people I know around the US and even internationally. But so we still have that stuff. So I still see patients, because we still want to take care of them, that sort of thing. But my day to day, that's the one thing about dentistry too, is it's going to change every day. So I can't say, this is at 8 a.m., this is what we're doing. 8:05, this is what we're doing. Because it's every patient that presents has a unique situation. They have a unique ask. And so we have to then navigate what that is and figure out what it looks like and what they want. And then, kind of go from there. So the one thing I would tell them if they were going to shadow me is that no day will be exactly alike. And like I said, that's part of one great thing about dentistry is it's not mundane.
Yeah. So We all love those videos, the laughing gas videos. Do you have an experience with the
That's a
patient?
great question.
The laughing gas. Yeah, it was funny too because we have patients ask for it, and to be honest, we didn't even plumb laughing gas into my practice because I was just like, hey, I don't know if I need that. I wish probably now I did. But to be honest, it's also super expensive to plumb into a practice. Like you don't realize it has to run through copper tubing and all this sort of stuff. And back in the day, this is back when people were stealing that stuff from, from developments and stuff, and home
Horrible
builders.
Bosses, I think, has a whole skit about stealing laughing gas from like their dentist and
Really?
stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they have now cylinders that are just like on things. But so I've never. They are great videos. There's a lot of funny stuff on social media with it. We actually will use some oral sedation. So if patients just want to take some pills and relax, they have somebody drive them, or I'll actually work with my nurse anesthetist. So we have a nurse anesthetist that'll come in. And he's fantastic. He can put patients to sleep for me. So then it's like they don't even remember anything. And we can just do all their work.
He's like a hypnotist?
No. He's actual starts IVs. The nurse. Yeah, no, that would be great if we could just do it through hypnotism. That might be a great field to expand into. No, he's a CRNA. So he's a registered nurse and anesthetist. So he can, he starts the IV, puts them to sleep and does all that sort of stuff for us.
Nice. So you guys have never really done the whole laughing gas aspect of it?
No, not in my practice. But like I said, we had to do it on each other in dental school because you had to experience it. Yeah. So you had to it's always in threes, right? Because you don't want to, that's the way everything's set up in dental school. Because if you're going to do something to somebody, you don't want it to be directly to them in case it was a bad experience and they might try to take it out on you, right? So it's like, you work in a group of three. And so you would have to do it, administer it, monitor it, then, just so because, I don't know in Colorado, to be honest, because we don't use it on day-to-day, but in Florida, you had to be like certified to use it, so you had to have like this, that you had to show that you knew how to like properly administer it. But it's a great point.
Because I've had my wisdom tooth taken out. So I don't remember actually the experience, but I know I was silly. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But so you guys, do you guys don't do wisdom teeth, or you guys have a whole different, like you just aesthetic, you just numb the area?
Yeah. Well, and even when we're on laughing gas or under anesthesia, we still numb the area. So patients, that may be a miss, like patients think, oh no, then they don't do that. No, we still got to do that because you're going
to wake up. Like,
you're still going to be uncomfortable. It's still going to hurt, really bad. And even when we see patients that are like sedated, so like even if you went and had your wisdom teeth taken out, like at an oral surgeon, sometimes they'll put an IV in your arm, give you something to sleep, then you'll wake up and you see those videos. That's what they did. Right. And and you'll see those waking up too. And you'll see them all, real, sluggish and just kind of slurring words, and looks like they had a really rough night out at the bar or whatever their thing is, and so but they'll still numb you up during that just because even if we don't, or we can sense, because your heart rates will go, like patient's heart rate will go up, their breathing will go up, so we can tell if they're still kind of feeling pain. So we'll still use our local anesthetics, but like I said, most of the time if I can do that under local anesthetic. If the patient's comfortable with it, I can refer it to an oral surgeon, or like I said, I can bring in my associate to help put the patient to sleep, whatever comfort level that they're asking for.
Is there any risk with putting someone to sleep, like with?
There's inherent risk when you start an IV and start putting medication in people's bodies, no doubt. That's why I don't do it, because that's not my forte. That's why I have somebody else who does it every day do it. Because there are dentists in town who do both, which is fine, and that works for their practice. But I've just always been like, well, no, I'll let them be down there putting patients to sleep, or at the foot of the bed, so to speak, or the foot of the chair. I'll be up here doing what I know how to do, right? And focusing on what I know how to do, and we can work in tandem. And most of the patients find it to be a really nice way to do things. So,
have you ever? How do you actually? I'm sure you have to deal with this a lot. How do you handle bad, horrible breath, like when you're working on someone's mouth?
Yeah, most of the time that in private practice setting, I think most people are at least a little cognizant and aware of when they're going to the dentist that maybe they'll brush their teeth and that sort of. But I will say,
some people have halitosis or whatever.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and that's maybe a chronic, ongoing condition. There's stuff, and there are some good newer mouth rinses and stuff that can help with those sorts of things. But we did, and there's that thing of kind of having like periodontal, like if you have periodontal disease, like you can kind of tell because the breath is a certain way, if that makes sense. So we would see more of that, like when I would work in emergency clinics, like in training in dental school or in the army or what have you. Like when we were seeing, you know, in like when I was deployed and we were seeing locals that were, you know, were on the economy, so to speak.
Right.
We would see that. So, and a lot of times you would just, now that you ask, we would actually in our mask put a little bit of like the topical numbing stuff, so they would kind of numb your nose, so you wouldn't smell. Right, exactly. So you wouldn't necessarily.
That's smart.
You wouldn't necessarily.
Yeah, because you can't just be like, oh, shoot.
Yeah. So you would kind of know. And to be honest, most of the time, like whoever screened them for you would be like, "Hey, doc, you might want to, you might want to do this time, you know, like that sort of thing."
But you do mostly cosmetic, right?
Yeah. Nowadays, the primary focus of the practice and what I'm, you know, afforded the opportunity to do is a lot of aesthetic stuff, enhancing a lot of aesthetics. You know, and that can be from replacing teeth, you know, just veneer cases, complex cases, combining all sorts of different things. But that's where, you know, and again, to be completely transparent, I still see some patients and still do some digital general dentistry. I'm not trying to sit on a pedestal and say all I do all day long is veneers on everybody. I want to be as authentic as I can. So, but that's where kind of the shift of the practice has kind of gone. And to be honest, a lot of our, you know, our social media and our branding and stuff is kind of drawn into that in what we, you know, and I love doing those cases and impacting those patients' lives. So that's really where that desire comes from.
We're going to take a quick break to thank our sponsors. Reveal Med Spa. Look and feel your best at Reveal Med Spas. With personalized plans that deliver real results, radiant skin, restored confidence, and natural rejuvenation.
At Reveal Med Spa, we see you. More than just aesthetic and wellness treatments, we provide a safe, judgment-free space where you feel valued, heard, and supported.
Visit revealmedspas.com.
I think it is literally just that too. We'll just double check. Book your next session at revealmedspas.com. That's revealmedspas.com.
Home Day. Buying a home shouldn't be overwhelming. Home Day empowers you to save on your mortgage by putting you in control of the process. Lower your cost and take the next step towards home ownership with ease. Visit gethomeday.com today.
Fast Signs. From banners to vehicle wraps, Fast Signs delivers custom visual solutions to help your business stand out. Their team ensures your message is clear, bold, and effective. Get your signage needed handled at fastsigns.com. That's fastsigns.com. Epic Eyewear. Stylish, affordable, and designed for adventure, Epic Eyewear has the sunglass and eyewear you need to see life more clearly. From the mountains to the beach, protect your eyes with high-quality frames and lenses. Check out their collection at epiceyewear.com. And by the way, Andrew, we do have a special discount, COSBP15 for 15% off, I believe.
Cars Helping Charities. Turn your unused cars into a meaningful contribution with Cars Helping Charities. They make it easy to donate your vehicle to support local causes. One of the local charities that we like to support on behalf of Cars Helping Charities, actually, and part of their sponsorship is Mattersville. And check them out too.
They're awesome. They are a tiny house community for veterans suffering with PTSD. They have a property out in Yoder, Colorado, and then they also have one in Sedalia, Colorado as well.
Donate today and make a difference. Visit carshelpingcharities.org. That's carshelpingcharities.org.
Dream Accounting Solutions.
Take the stress out of managing your books with Dream Accounting Solutions. They provide reliable expert accounting services tailored to small businesses. Simplify your finances at dreamaccountingsolutions.com. That's dreamaccountingsolutions.com.
Exponential Impact. Exponential Impact is driving innovation and entrepreneurial success in Colorado Springs. Supporting startups with mentorship, funding, and community resources, they help businesses grow and thrive. Learn more about their impact at exponentialimpact.com. That's exponentialimpact.com.
And now let's get back to the show.
How do you calm the nerves if everybody has like that stereotype of being afraid to go to the dentist? Is there mechanisms that you learn through schooling or just through being a business owner where you can calm people's nerves? They haven't been to a dentist in a few years and whatever, you know, that's to calm the nerves and so folks can.
Yeah. And everybody's so unique in their previous experiences.
Yeah.
I think just, we try to be real and in transparent in the process. We try to explain things. We try to put them at ease, mostly just like anybody does though, because a lot of times it's just us talking and just, you know, it's simple things as far as, you know, body position, those sorts of things of just trying to understand body language of, are they nervous? Are they, on guard? And then trying to deflate that. But a lot of that just comes from either, reading books on that sort of stuff, dealing with people and understanding, and probably just having a little bit of a natural innate ability to do that. So I'm not the kind of dentist that is like, you did this wrong. You did. And in dentistry, it's interesting because that's what we do. Like if you came into the practice and you were coming in for an exam, and I'm not saying anything bad about your teeth, but the first thing we would do is look at your teeth and we would tell you everything wrong. Right. So it's like, well, why don't we try to flip the script, and why don't we at least try to say something positive to start the conversation off? Right. And so even just little things like that, maybe trying to break their traditional experience, again, going back to kind of the pillars of the practice of trying to build it, it's trying to be high touch and not make patients feel like they're just getting run through a mill, if you will, or that sort of experience of, oh, I don't even know, and the patients have always seen me. Like I've been there that long, so they've grown accustomed to the fact of like, okay, I know if I go in there, I'm going to see Dr. Hall. It's not like I'm going to get surprised and see somebody else different today or that sort of thing. So I think with that, they grow more comfortable over time. Right. So.
Yeah, that's great. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I'm sure like over the span, has it been like 17 years now that you've been in practice, right? Like 08 to 17 years. That's crazy. How has technology changed? I mean, not only in general dentistry, but like over everything that you do now on the cosmetic side of things as well.
Yeah. It's funny because I still use some digital systems that I even used back in 2005. But they've enhanced their abilities and that sort of thing. So there's certain manufacturers who went all in on digital dentistry kind of to start, and we've seen them progress, kind of, if you will, grown up with them over the years. And so we still use a lot of that stuff. Really, at the end of the day, it's just about, again, look, we were just talking about, it changes the patient's experience. So like, for instance, like, if you've ever had any complex dentistry done, you've had like a dental impression, right? With that nasty goopy stuff that they put in your mouth, it hardens up, they break the suction and pull it out of your mouth. So a lot of times we don't have to do any of that stuff. We can just take digital scanners now and just scan all the stuff, then that can be then transferred to my laboratory digitally. Everything is, just as with all businesses nowadays, or most businesses, right? We're transmitting data and stuff in that capacity. So we've seen that grow. We've seen, we're still seeing, as far as pure technology, we've seen 3D printing, not new to dentistry by any means.
Awesome,
yeah. I mean, so then people are like, wow, what would you do in dentistry with 3D printers? But, I've had a 3D printer for, over 8 years, and that's been something that, so that technology's come in. We've seen AI also try to come in with certain aspects of,
triangulating angles of teeth.
Well, yeah. I mean, the AI driving the algorithms of some of the digital design. So a lot of things too is changed in dentistry is that even like our lab technicians who are our colleagues that were, they were very like everything was very meticulous in their hands, right? It was that sort of thing, where now a lot of it's on a computer screen, right? And they're designing and they're doing all the stuff, even for smile makeovers, even for a lot of the stuff we do. We can do smile simulations through AI. We can do,
cool.
So we've seen all these sorts of things come back. The challenge is you got to be careful because sometimes AI can overpromise.
That's true. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, because there is no real, or simulations or whatever can overpromise, right? Because they don't know biology, right? They don't know the limitations
Unless you program them too.
Right. And maybe we'll get there, right? But then we're talking very individualized, stuff, which
is where medicine's going.
Right.
anyways,
And in 100 years, it's probably where we will be.
Maybe 10 years, to be honest.
Yeah, that's true. Who knows what they say, right? With the exponential learning that we'll
For
see over the next decade, it will equate to what the last 100 years was, right? Or what
exactly,
have you.
yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, the future's bright as far as, because there is a lot of digital stuff in dentistry. But like I said, I think the point being is that at the end, it's about the patient experience. And can we alter that? Can we improve it? Can we enhance the outcomes? Then those are things that, okay, maybe I should look into from a digital standpoint of bringing into the practice or integrating into the practice, that sort of stuff.
You guys should
That
have
makes sense.
You guys should have divers like Casa Bonita.
Oh yeah. Yeah, some entertainment experience there.
How
Yeah.
can you be in pain when you're watching divers? I mean,
Yeah, I guess that's true. I guess it's distraction, right?
It's a hell of a write-off, okay?
Yeah, it's distraction
That could be a hell of a
technique. Yeah. No,
Well,
that's good.
Well, with not only like, I guess, engaging further in your education and learning the things that you have learned through the years, it's also being a business owner and being a leader.
Mhm.
Talk about that experience, obviously starting with essentially by yourself and then adding on a team over the course of the past 17 years, what that looked like back then versus what it looks like now, and some learning experiences from there as well.
Yeah, you learn a lot about yourself as a leader when you start a business from scratch, and you don't know anything really. Because again, unfortunately, and I don't mean to be speaking down on dental school, but they just don't have enough time. There's no business courses. You don't get a dental degree and an MBA. You have to go back and do that if you want to do that. So a lot of it's learning on the job training of that. And yeah, initially it was bare bones, right? Because staffing, because obviously payroll is a huge expense. And if you don't have a bunch of patients, you don't have the money to pay, your team members. I've always been very aware of the fact that they are team members. They're not necessarily employees. Because if they feel like employees, then they're just going to be employees. If they feel like they're part of the team, and that was something that was installed to me very early, was like, make sure that you take that mindset. Because it's hard enough to keep good people in the practice. Over the years, we've had different formulations of teams, different sizes of teams,
Right.
That sort of thing. I've always been, it's funny because I've always been of the mindset of less is more though with a team, because I see practices, and they have all these different people and all these different roles. And and to me, it just looks like chaos. That's just my personality. And so for me, it's always been smaller team, more touch points with the patient by those same individuals, right? Because again, that whole thing of like, you come in, you're going to see so-and-so, like, so-and-so is going to be there. And not to say we haven't had turnover. I've had assistants leave to go become dental hygienists. I've had people go into other, completely different career fields. But like I said, I think at the end of the day, you learn a lot about your own leadership style. And I would say probably the takeaway is that the team is the most important thing when it comes to patient satisfaction. And it's kind of a seamless collaboration of that helps us get through our day to day. And so that's the approach that I've always kind of taken, is like, I want to be collaborative in that as a leader. I try to set the example personally, like by working hard, being on time, not being the boss that shows up, 20 minutes late every day, those sorts of things. And then I've tried to foster a sense of ownership by them, because I think anybody who has, takes ownership in something, they have more to give. And then they in turn feel like they're getting more as well out of it. But I think that's kind of the approach that I've tried to take in order to create a specialized environment that we get to do what we get to do by helping patients, achieve the smile they've always dreamed of or something like that.
Yeah. Well, it's a common goal that you guys are trying to achieve, right? Just make people feel comfortable, get them to their goals, whatever it might be, and their dental experience. And then what do you guys also do? Do you anything at all for like culture, for like, do you guys do like yearly parties or anything like that as a team? What does that look like?
Yeah. And to be honest, right now I have a very, very good team. And I would venture to say it's probably one of the most tight-knit teams, because it's tough. In dentistry too, again, complete transparency, it's hard because a lot of male providers, most of the teams are all female. So it's a diverse environment, right? Day to day. And if you've ever worked with 6, 7, 8 females in the same building at one time, it can be a challenge for them interpersonally at times. So right now with some of the leadership like my office manager and some of the other leadership that we have in place, they've done a really nice job of fostering that relationship amongst them. So yeah, we try to do like a quarterly
That's cool.
thing out of the office as far as, something. We've done everything from a comedy show, something that was surprising, which I was surprised at how good my assistants were, which was kind of scared me, was that we did the axe throwing stuff,
That's
that sort of
hilarious.
stuff.
Oh yeah.
So it's just simple events like that to get, because again, day to day, a lot of what we do is, we're in people's personal space. We're all together in people's personal space. Like, the heightened, there's a heightened, arousal around that, just the emotion that's tied to that, whether they've had a bad experience, whether they're not happy with something they just had done, whether they're in pain.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so to get out of that environment, right, to separate from that environment is important. And then we'll try to celebrate, obviously, like big holidays, end of year stuff, and try to support them. And we've done that traditionally over the years as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How does one team scale? Do you guys talk about sales? Do you have like an internal sales team? Like, let's talk about growth and what that looks like.
Yeah,
for you
no,
guys.
growth really just comes from either just acquiring new patients or by doing more and more complex dentistry, I think. And I don't mean to simplify dentistry as a business, but you either have to see more, if you're doing fillings, you got to see more patients and do more fillings in order to be more productive, right? And then you might need more chairs, you might need more assistants, you also need more material supplies, that sort of thing. Or you slow down and you see one patient and you do a lot of work, right, that they're desiring or, that they want to do. And so that's kind of where just because I didn't love those practices that were what we kind of say in dentistry, like you're on roller skates all day where you're just like zooms, you're just from one thing to the next. My thing is I would rather sit down and see 2 patients a day. I'd rather, prep a veneer case in the morning and seat a veneer case in the afternoon. I'm starting, one smile transformation and I'm finishing up with another one. That's a great day. And then we're also, because they're usually paying a premium, so we want to feel accessible. We don't want them to feel like we're just in and out of the room and they're not important, right? Since they are, again, most of this is wants based. It's because they want to enhance their smile. They want a new confidence, they want to restore confidence for something. Right. That along those lines.
Talk about the testimonials, the folks who have gotten that service, maybe veneers done or whatever, and they weren't just comfortable with their smile. Because there's nothing worse than being uncomfortable with your smile, right? And then coming out of those series of procedures and you have a whole new smile. Like, talk about those experiences from your patients.
Yeah, that's what fueled me to continue to go into this, this specialized area, if you will, right? Was seeing that early on, and seeing, really like one of the first couple patients that you have that impact and you see the transformation, and it's kind of like a light goes off, right? Or it's kind of like, oh, that's I love the fact that I was able to impact that person's life, whether that's installing new confidence, whether it's restoring old confidence, and then I get to watch them carry that forward into their daily life, personally, professionally. And then, hopefully they appreciate what we've done. And like you said, they'll do some sort of testimonial, or they'll talk about their experiences, or they'll, pose for a photo for a magazine for us or something like that. Right. So yeah, that's where, if you were to ask me how I define like success, that's exactly it. It's not the technical artistry of what I do. That's what I do, but the success comes from watching the impact that it has for a long time, right? Because that's something, like I said, they can carry with them everywhere. I tell people all the time, it's like, I see women carrying around very expensive accessories, right? And that sort of thing. And I'm like, but they may only use that special purse or handbag. I guess you can't call it a purse if it's that expensive, right? It's a handbag. Or they wear those special shoes twice a year, but their smile, I mean, if they're having coffee they're engaging somebody and their smile is that best accessory. That's why I've always kind of said, I think it's the best accessory that you can invest in. But again, it's just, that's what I do too. So I have my biases towards that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have 4 crowns, and it was almost 10 years ago. I think I need to get them checked because they said something about 10 years. I think you probably would know.
Yeah. Well, there's no guarantee. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a great question. And that's a question that I often get is how long does cosmetic dentistry last? Like and I have veneers in my mouth that have been there 20 years.
Okay. Yeah.
So
I'm aware of how they also told me to be aware of it too.
yeah.
it's
So
like-
yeah. So be aware of it, seek regular, and this is what I tell patients who after it's like, yeah, because we see, and that's the other thing, we see patients from all over the US. So we'll have patients fly in, see us just through their veneers, and then I may never see them again, or I may hear from them if they need to see somebody or they want a referral in their local area. But it's one of the most common questions I get is how long should this last? And my answer is, well, it's decades. I can't predict the future, but as long as you take care of it in the proper way, as long as you're getting your teeth cleaned, proper diet, brushing, flossing, those sorts of things, there's no reason why it can't last you decades. Okay. But I'm also honest, like, because the trend has changed. This is another thing that's kind of changed, not just out of digital stuff, changing dentistry, is that before it was like the only people doing veneers were kind of older people or, people who had the money, right? Because I have this income now, or I have this, extra money because I'm not paying for my kids or I'm not doing this, that, or the other, right? So, but now we've seen much younger generation who really is taking it on, probably driven a lot by social media influencers who are getting their teeth done, so we've seen that too. So I have to be careful because a 20-year-old, 22-year-old girl that I'm doing veneers on, I'm not going to mislead them and say, you'll never have to have this done again. Like I want to set like an expectation of, hey, there's a chance you might have to have this done again. When you're 50, you may not want the same look. You may not want these bright white, super white teeth. You may want it in your 20s and in your 30s, but in your 50s, you may want to settle it back a little bit. You may not want to, be forward first with that smile.
Yeah, there might be some kind of uncanny valley to that because there's a natural like color to age on teeth.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what I say, age appropriate, right? Or age appropriate sort of things. And some patients are very, I don't know if the word's deterrent. Well, I guess they know what they want when it comes to that. But that's also a thing that, you learn over time of like, okay, age of the patient, where are we at in 10 years from now? And to be honest, I've had patients who have chosen to bright or white and we've redone it. We've had to redo it in 10 years, but that was their choice. I don't make that choice for them. It's a collaborative session of, hey, what do you think of this color? What do you think of this color? Do you want a natural look? Cosmetic dentistry is cosmetics. We got to remember that. And I use this analogy a lot with some of my female clients because they know that, but I'm like, look, you can go to a plastic surgeon and you can say, I just want to naturally enhance something, whatever that is. I don't want it to be obvious, right? I just want it to look nicer. That's a natural enhancement. Or you're like, there's some people who just want to go off the deep end, right? And they're just like, I want everybody to know that I had something done. And it's the same thing when it comes to the teeth. And I try to tell patients, I'm like, where are you in that spectrum? Let's be honest about that so that I can gauge, so I can hit that target or at least get as close as I can to that target.
Because missing it really sucks.
Missing it sucks. Missing it really sucks. And missing it is, is more time consuming, more costly.
It's like almost like spelling a tattoo wrong. Or something.
Right. It's reversible with a lot of work. And unfortunately might mean, more tooth structure removal, might mean a lot more time in the chair, a lot more, some uncomfortable times, those sorts of things. But you're right. But we also have things in place so that we don't want to miss that mark.
Absolutely,
right? That's something that you learn. That's something that you learn is that put the steps in place that you check those things, right? And you kind of gauge those things. And nowadays it's nice because like I've built enough of a portfolio that I can say to a lot of my patients, I'll say, look, go on my Instagram for instance and say, and you can scroll through and you'll see a bunch of before and afters. And I'll say, pick 3 of them that you like, right? Pick 3 of those that you like, because then I can kind of know I know all those cases very intimately. I know the ceramists who did them. Like I know the shade like of what they're looking for. So I can start to really narrow it down for that patient. Is it a natural look? Is it an unnatural look? You know, those sorts of things. So again, it's through that experience that you learn those sorts of things.
Sounds a lot like an art form in a lot of ways.
It is. It's like I said, it's a technical art form. And then we grade ourselves on microns of accuracy. So it's very challenging.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's a good way to kind of state what we do on a day-to-day basis. So
What percentage of folks do you think, or do you know, like coming to your practice who do like veneers, maybe like the front four versus like a full implants of all the teeth? Like, what does that look like for folks who might not know they can do that?
And that's two different population pools for me. And I think that's a confusion point. It's funny because we were just talking about this on some social media stuff. It's like, don't just jump in and think I got to take all my teeth out and get implants and do the Kanye West type of thing. You know, like those sorts of things, or Post Malone, those guys that have, you know, all this implant supported stuff. They might have had needs for that, right? And if the patient has a need for that, like if they have severe periodontalcies, if they don't have good tooth structure to support veneers or support crowns or support some other prosthesis that can help enhance their smile, then we'll talk about that. Okay. But in my practice, the majority of it's still tooth-borne restorations. By that, I mean, we're just enhancing the aesthetics, the size, shape, the color, you know, the symmetry of their smiles, that sort of thing. The better question may be how many just do 4, how many do 6, how many do 8, how many do 10.
And it's always in sets, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a rule, you know, because, you know, but, you know, just today I was doing one front tooth. You know, it's more challenging though, right? Because now we have to blend with nature, and that's hard, right? It's so most dentists will tell you, yeah, it's 2, 4, 6, 8 as you kind of, you know, go. That's just kind of a rule that they'll say. It's usually a 4, 6, 8 rule. But yeah, I mean, and that's not something that's hard and fast. Honestly, some of my like favorite cases, probably because they are more challenging, are less teeth. You know, I hate to say it, I can make 10 teeth always symmetrical, same color. That, I mean, not to say there aren't nuances and challenges with it, but that's a little more cut and dry than the patient who says, hey doc, I just want to do 2 teeth and I want it to be this tooth and this tooth. Can you make my smile look better? Those are more challenging and fun cases, but it does require a little bit more collaboration because I'm with my team. And when I mean team, I mean time with my team members on site. Also may mean time with my team members who geographically aren't on site, which means like my lab technicians. So do we actually have to have them go meet with them in order to try to take a look at what we're trying to achieve here? So it does get more time consuming for everybody, but that shouldn't be. I guess I would want patients to take away of like, well, I thought I always had to get 6, 8, or 10 veneers. Like it doesn't. It's not always the case.
You have a family, a young family still, and essentially they grew up probably you doing this the whole time because you said you have some kids even middle school, high school age as well.
Yeah.
Talk about raising a family while also raising your own business at the same time.
Yeah. Well, when you do your own business, you obviously there's challenges and stresses, and you need that support system in place, right? And I've been fortunate enough to have a wonderful family who's always been highly supportive of what I do. They understand what I do and why I do what I do. You know, but I work hard, I work a lot. So I don't take that for granted that they've always been there. But the interesting thing is that neither of them are interested in dentistry. So either they think I work too much, they don't like it. At this point, neither of them have a vast interest in going into that field, which I'm okay with. But it's just interesting because, like I said before, sometimes there is kind of that generational component of, you know, dad's got to practice. I can go to dental school. I can come back and work with dad for a few years or that sort of thing. And I would welcome that. But I think they have different aspirations. But yeah, they've, you know, any business owner, you know, needs that support structure and stuff at home.
It's hard, right? It's a sacrifice. And I'm assuming you work a lot of hours and you've probably maybe missed things and sacrificed other things with the kids.
Yeah. And it's come in phases of that. Like early on, I was working a lot more, kind of had different goals too. At that point, I also wanted to educate a lot. So I was out educating on the road a lot, educating. That's a tough grind.
Like speaking at events?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So speaking at events, a lot of the digital dentistry stuff we were doing as far as like exposure events for other doctors to get exposure, to see what was out there. So we were kind of doing kind of hands-on CE events for them. So we did that for numerous years, all over. It's funny, dentistry's taken me all over the world, which is it's hard to believe. I've been as far as Taiwan to lecture.
Wow.
And so it's, and so to get to your question, the point is, yes, I've made it more of a focus now that the ages that they're at to selectively, here's what the truth is. I learned how to say no. Because a lot of times we have a hard time saying no to stuff. Like, can you go do this? Can you do this? Will you do this event? And, it's kind of saying, okay, I've got to say no to a few things in order to free up some time, in order to be around. So I would say the last few years, and some of that innately happened because of COVID, because everything kind of changed. Right. And so for me, it was also eye-opening because I was home a lot more. And I guess I saw the rewards of what that looked like. Right. And my daughter rides horses competitively. My son plays sports at a high level. So I don't want to miss these years right now, because this is kind of the last few years that they have to do that. Right. Unless they carry on through collegiate, the collegiate levels and that sort of thing. So these are kind of those prime years of the weekends are sacred. I've scaled my schedule down, which is nice. And allows, but I'm fortunate and I'm very fortunate I realized this to be able to do that. But early on, you gotta go and you gotta do the things you gotta do to get to that point. But I've been doing, it's 20 plus years that I've been doing dentistry. So it's kind of a little bit of time to focus on other things too.
Yeah. Which is interesting because you're probably, for sure in the Springs, the fastest growing area zip code probably in the Springs. Ford Amphitheater we're talking about right before this. So many things, right? That's up in that area off Northgate, and you're at Voyager and Northgate, like that intersection right there is where you're at. So you're in the middle of all the action. Right. How has that shaped your practice as well? Well,
obviously it's interesting because we went in there in 2008 and then the recession hit, because all that, not everything in the large scope that it is now, but a lot of the things up there were already kind of in plans, right? There was stuff, there was like, there'll be a grocery store here, there'll be this, there'll be that, but then it was supposed to be within a couple of years. And we're like, okay, this is great because this is an area of growth and that sort of thing. And then we kind of saw things get, pushed off for a few years during the recession. And then we saw things start to mount, and then you start to see more stuff mounting, and then it's just kind of like, then they build, the Top Golf, they build the amphitheater, they build, all sorts of stuff up there that you never thought would be in there in your, immediate vicinity. But obviously that sort of stuff, again, going back, it was somewhat unique because my thing was, I put the practice in quote unquote, not like professional space, but more of retail space. But that was for visibility because I didn't have any patients, right? Mm-hmm. But that for now, that's a great thing too, because patients or potential patients who go to Sprouts see the practice, right? That sort of thing. And someone will say, we get a lot of patients who say, I just drove by, right? I just saw you guys because I'm in this area, right? So the more businesses that come into the area, obviously for us, that's usually going to benefit us because it's bringing more people and more traffic, not necessarily, more, traffic of people coming around the area so we can see that.
But it also brings more competition too. There's a lot of dentists up there.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. For a long time, I was the only dentist that far north. Then it was, everybody wants to move north. And then it was, all these new practices that are opening up are all going to be north, but that's fine. There's more, dentistry is unique in that fact. It's just we're not competing with each other. Mm-hmm. Dr. Hall's personal opinion. We're not. There's enough the population in Colorado Springs is also growing. I
Absolutely,
feel,
yeah.
right? So there's plenty of people which have plenty of teeth, and there's plenty of work to go around.
There's a reason why there's more practices, because
Right. There's a need, right? There, it's, like I think we were saying, Colorado Springs is a very heavily saturated per capita market for dentists, probably just because it's a nice place to live. It's highly desirable. The same thing you see in certain aspects, in certain parts of Denver. But I'll never forget when I moved here, it was like, I think it was the second densest population of dentists per capita.
Wow.
And that was a
Okay,
long
yeah.
time ago. And there's only more dentists here. I mean, there's a lot more dentists in town. But like I said, I don't necessarily see that as competition.
It hasn't really affected your business.
No, I mean, I'm sure in some way, shape, or form it has, but that's the interesting also about cosmetic dentistry is that in dentistry, anybody can say they're a cosmetic dentist. So, and again, I'm not putting down the kids just out of school, but they don't know a lot of things that we've learned over the years of how to do these cases. So unfortunately, what it's meant we fixed more cases, right? We've had more things to fix because we've had stuff that's come in and been like, I'm not happy. My veneers aren't staying on.
Oh my gosh.
Like all these situations that arise. And then what they ultimately kind of do is seek out what they think is somebody with a broader knowledge or a
Right.
higher knowledge, right? Because now their situation went from, oh, I thought I was just getting this, to now this got a whole lot more complex. Now I need somebody who might have some experience in that. So to be honest, that's what it's more lent itself to than necessarily like, I feel like it's not draining patients out of my practice.
Yeah, that's almost worse.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's worse for the patient,
For
right?
the community.
Right. Yeah. And I'm not saying there's a lot of great dentists, but you don't know what you don't know when it comes to some of these cases.
Absolutely,
And again, some of the greatest lessons we learn in anything are from our mistakes, our failures, our challenges, that sort of thing, right? And so inevitably, cosmetic dentistry is going to prevent setbacks, challenges. And that's why I think like resiliency is a huge character trait for cosmetic dentists or for dentists in general. Because what we do is, it's very meticulous. There will be setbacks. We're working on complex cases, whatever that means for you based off of your knowledge, right? Because what's complex to one person may not be complex to somebody else or vice versa, right? So and then as I alluded to before, and then we're kind of grading ourselves on the success of these cases, not only by the patient satisfaction, but also by, are we happy with it? Did we get everything done exactly right? So it's an interesting thing, but I think I had a dentist come into the office a couple weeks ago, and a younger dentist, and he just kind of wanted to see, because he's seen our stuff on social media, and he's just like, I love how clean your dentistry is, how everything just looks really nice. And granted, again, we're putting stuff out there that is meant to look nice because we want patients to see stuff that looks nice, right? To attract them. But he's like, I just want to see what it is. And I told him, I said, look, man, I've been doing this long enough to be honest with you that there's days that you're going to have to just kind of bounce back. There's going to be days that are real challenges if this is what you really want to do. Because he was like, that's where I want to do. I want to have a practice kind of modeled like what you're doing. And and he said, what advice? And the takeaway was, he's like, I really appreciate you being honest with me. He's like, because I thought it was just going to be like, I was going to walk in here and you were going to be like, oh, this is so easy. It's so like, it was going to be all about you, and about how you've mastered all this stuff, and there's never any challenges and there's never any stumbling blocks, and you don't ever have to adapt to a patient or anything like that. Because those are the things he's dealing with even at this young point in his career. And I was like, no, I said, some of those things, unfortunately, will still be staples. It's just depending on what's the current, issue, or what are you trying to help this patient with. That might change if your focus is on veneers, or just smile makeovers or whatever it is, or, clear, or, if you're just moving people's teeth around to make them look nice, those sorts of things, they all inherently can bring on their own challenges. So
Would you define yourself and others in cosmetic dentistry as perfectionists?
yeah. I think any dentist in general, well, I would say most dentists, that gets installed into you in dental school. It's just the nature of the beast.
But you said you have to be like micromillimeters.
Right. Microns is what we're looking at.
Microns,
Yeah, microns. That's the way everything's graded. That's the way everything is loose. So yeah, there's cases that I look at and I'm like, I could have done subtly that different. Right. And you just look at it and you're like, and the before and after picture and the portrait photo and everything looks phenomenal.
No
and
one
the
will
patient,
ever know.
right. And the patient is smiling from ear to ear. And you're like, if I had to do it over again, I might have done this slightly different. Like, so if you define that as a perfectionist, which I think it might, because you're always still trying to perfect something, the challenge is that the pursuit of perfection can also be your biggest downfall, right? And so you have to, again, understand that the outcomes are driven by so many different variables. Like, is the patient easy to work with? Are they not easy to work with? Some patients, and they'll admittedly say, I'm a terrible patient. I can't stand being in this chair. Is that's going to influence it? There's all sorts of variables that people think it's just like it's, and again, I think unfortunately it gets kind of simplified by marketing, by social media, by those sorts of things. And again, I'm big on social media. I love social media and I love what it's done for our practice, but I think we have to be prudent in what the consumer takes from it, right? They have to understand the process still. They have to do those sorts of things. But yeah, a long answer, yes. I would think perfectionist is part of it. If not, you wouldn't be in dentistry, or you wouldn't be in dentistry long.
Right.
Or you're on the opposite spectrum where you just don't care, right? And it doesn't matter to you. But I think you probably fall, it's probably yin or yang. It's not like you have some that are in between that and that sort of thing. But yeah, I would say I would tend to migrate into that population.
Yeah. So I like to bring things that this is the Colorado Springs Business Podcast.
Yeah.
So like some Colorado Springs facts. Did you know that the person who discovered the fluoride connection was from Colorado Springs? Happened in Colorado Springs?
I have heard that.
And it wasn't just a person, he was a dentist.
Right. It was a dentist here. Yes.
Yeah.
Long time ago. And somebody was just talking about this in my practice the other day, because obviously this is somewhat of a hot topic right now as far as with water fluoridation.
So Colorado Springs has naturally occurring fluoride.
Right.
So it's like, he was able to like figure out like there was this something called like the Colorado browning, or like, because too much fluoride can cause browning.
Right. Staining us. Yeah. Well, too early exposure during at certain times. Yes.
Okay. So yeah, I knew there was something connected there, and like he was able. I don't know how he made the connection, but he was able to make the connection, and now he's the reason why other places put fluoride in their water.
Right.
Which is a topic. What is your ideas on that topic?
Yeah,
if you want to talk about it. Like,
I won't get political by any means. I don't think this and
Donald Trump.
No. Well, it's not Donald Trump here that we're talking about. This is
you can somehow make it connected.
Yeah. Well, I guess somehow if there's been appointed by, I guess, or somehow, right?
Yeah.
I don't. And again, I'm not a daily like CNN or Fox News or whatever watcher. That's not my favorite thing to watch.
They're good at connecting things to him, though,
right?
so.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's always you're always trying to pass blame or pass something, right?
Right.
But I think I just saw this today in an email that came across my inbox about because Utah, I believe, is going to start pulling the fluoride out of the water. Which
I heard that too.
Yeah, which is surprising given just pretty conservative culture in the state of Utah, I would think.
And they're in the mountains too. It's like we actually have to certain places have to actually take it out or make it less.
Yeah, right. Yeah, they have to dial it back, if you will. So yeah, I mean, I've always been a proponent of fluoride is good in the water. Okay, it is. I don't, people have their theories on everything about what's going to kill them, what's going to poison them, whatever it is. At the end of the day, none of us get out alive. But I think fluoride has a lot more benefits than disadvantages.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because what we're talking about typically is it's by like population segments typically, right? And it's, you worry about the underserved already, or what we kind of call maybe the underexposed. They don't have exposure to get to a dentist. They don't like that sort of things. So you need to put things into place to try to help their oral health, right? Like that's just like that's kind of our.
Well, we started putting iodine and salt and stuff. Like before that, we had like iodine.
Right. Exactly. So it's for the greater masses. I think it's that's where we have to, why we should be doing it. If people elect to do it themselves, then let that be their personal reason, but maybe not the government doing that for them. I'm sure the next phenomenon will be the water bottle that takes the fluoride out of the water if you're that person that doesn't want to have it in your, you know what I'm saying? Like there'll only be this kind of compounding effect because people will start to form their own beliefs or opinions on that or whatever it is that's a hot topic in medicine or dentistry or whatever. But I think at the end of the day, benefits, everything I've read, everything I've learned over the years, and we got to understand there's various types of fluorides even, right? Everybody just kind of throws fluoride into one big pool and says fluoride is fluoride. We use fluorides for all sorts of different things, for different purposes, for different desired outcomes. Even within my practice right now, I still use those things. But we'll respect the patients that say, I'll opt not to have it. Okay, great. That's your choice then, but not, we're going to take it out of your water and you have no choice, other than that to find a different source for it. But it'd be interesting. It's good. There's going to be some interesting fallout. There's going to be some interesting conversations, I think, around it. There'll be some more awareness that gets, brought up, but I think we're only on the initial parts of that. But yeah, I don't know that history, and I should. I that's something I should know about, the fluoridation in the water. Because like I said, we were talking about this the other day, because there's actually there's a lot of interesting history of dentistry in Colorado Springs. There was like some of the first biomimetic dentists were from here, like more of a holistic approach were from here.
Interesting.
Yeah. So there's a lot of interesting roots here, but again, I'm not from here, so I didn't grow up here, so I don't have a lot of that background.
Yeah. I also just like history, learning history and stuff.
No, that's great. That's great. I need to read up. I should have my kids read up on that actually. So I'm sure they don't learn about it in school. So
yeah.
You're just like putting that seed for them to join the family practice.
Read this real quick. Yeah. Let's talk about fluoride.
Were they born here in Colorado Springs?
No, I actually have a blended family. Cool. So my daughter is adopted. I've adopted my daughter. And so she was born in Colorado Springs, and then my son was also born in Colorado Springs, but like I said, kind of a blended mix there.
Very cool.
So it's just another interesting, diverse day in my life.
Love it. Sounds like you like a lot of, you don't like routine evidently. You just like surprises every day, right?
Again, like I said, it goes back to, no day is going to be the same.
Yeah.
It's kind of the mantra of my life, unfortunately. Well, fortunately or unfortunately, I guess it would kind of fuels me, as you said. So probably would miss it if I'm not the kind that likes to sit around and just like not do anything for a couple weeks. It's hard it's just not my nature.
I have one final question from me, at least before we start landing this ship. But Instagram.
Yeah.
You have a pretty big Instagram presence.
Yeah.
How have you built not only Instagram, but all your other profiles? I mean, it seems like you've had quite an audience look at you and love what you do and follow you and engage with your content.
Yeah, that's been an interesting process, to say the least. And so I got in, and I haven't been in social media since its inception. Like I haven't and it was strategic, I'll be honest, as far as going into it.
What year did you go in or start?
During COVID.
Oh, wow.
Because I had time.
Yeah.
To figure it out.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And and again, so one thing that's unique about my practice, which I think is a good point for your audience to understand too, is that a lot of times in cosmetic dentistry or in cosmetics or whatever, there's a lot of barriers to kind of finding out what's available for you. Like if you said, hey, what could you do for me? But you don't want to take the time to come into my office. You don't want to have to, take time off of work. You don't want to have to miss something, some other event, that sort of thing. So at the same time frame, because this goes hand in hand, and it'll kind of all come together here, is that, so I had a friend who had started offering virtual consults. And what better time than during COVID, because everything went virtual, right? And so I had this on my radar to do it, but whenever I want to implement something, I wanted to implement it at a high level. I didn't just want to kind of dip my toe in. I wanted to be all in and figure out a way to make this work for the patients. So long story short, I was like, okay, I need to let people know that I offer this service. So that was the whole reason for social media and Instagram, was to let people know that, hey, I want you to be able to submit a virtual consult as easy as just take and you can do it on your phone. Like, you guys have your phone. You could do it right now. You could take a picture of your teeth. You don't even have to include your face. You can say, upload it, say, hey, this is what I want to change. This is this is my phone number. This is my email. It'll get sent off and it'll come to me. It's not it's a unilateral experience, in that I mean that you don't get immediate gratification of, like, I don't pop up on your phone and start talking to you about your options. But what happens is then I take the time a day or two later, typically, I try to get back to patients within about 48 hours of sitting down. I'll look through whatever photos it is. I'll then walk you through all of your options. I'll talk to you about what it costs. I'll show you cases that are before and afters of similar things that you might want to see different. That was the whole reason why I got into social media, was because I needed to let people know that we offered that service, because it wasn't a traditional thing, but it's also what's fueled the cosmetic side of the practice, because patients could get answers from anywhere. So I can have a patient in Chicago who can submit a virtual consult, and happens. That's awesome. This happens all the time. And they'll just say, I love your work. I've seen your stuff on social media, and they'll reach out, they'll DM or what have you. And then I'll say, I'll just send them a link, say, just send this in. This is the best first step. And that's what I say to patients. It's the best first step. It doesn't cost you anything. It takes you less than 5 minutes. You can watch the video whenever you want. There's no and so that's what's helped fuel it. And what's helped fuel that is the social media.
Yeah.
So I had a friend, like I said, who had started kind of doing this, and he's kind of like, if you want to do this, you want to be all in, then you've got to grow your social media presence in order to do that. So he mentored me in how to do a lot of those sorts of things. All right. Certain things to do, that sort of thing. So for the first 2 years, I did it all myself, but that was like a full-time job. If you guys are on social media, it takes a lot of time to post. It takes a lot of time to edit. Mm-hmm. You guys, I've seen this stuff. You guys edit stuff up. It looks really good.
Well, we're actual social media marketers. We did this for people. So you're giving a good testimonial for our services.
Okay. Well, and I have a guy that I work with too. So awesome. What happens, I got to the point of saying, okay, I don't have time to do this, and this, right? I can't, I'm to the point now of the followership's up, the engagement's up. Now I need somebody that can probably what you guys do on database. I need somebody who can continually create new content, edit, get it out there, rather than just being raw stuff that I'm doing before and after, simple stuff. But it was enough to organically kind of, work up the ranks. So he's been great. He's based here in Colorado Springs. He's a great guy. And I met him on social media, of course, right? This is the way, it's probably the way you guys acquire a lot of your clients as well, which is great. But he's been running everything for me. So I kind of started with Instagram as the main funnel. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then his thing was, okay, we've got to build all these other platforms out, because it all comes, it all comes full circle, right? You need to cast the wide net, if you will, of that sort of thing.
Instagram likes to take things down too, sometimes randomly. And you might be showing, I don't know if you guys show explicit content, or not explicit, but maybe
where they consider graphic or whatever, surgical stuff, like blood, that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. We don't show a lot of that, but I have a lot of friends who are specialists, the guys that are doing implants and gum grafting, and they show a lot of that stuff. Mm-hmm. So I see all prohibited stuff. Most of our stuff we don't fall into those parameters, I guess, that flags it. Mm-hmm. It was a slow grind.
Sure is,
you
yeah.
know, and then it was okay. There was like some points of like big leaps, right? And there was some big wins. You know, then you get a couple things that go, you know, and that's the thing. You get a couple things that go viral. You get a couple, and then you know, and that always speeds up that cycle, right? But at least that's hard to maintain. That like where everything goes viral. I mean, that's hard for even people who are getting paid to do, you know, every day. So yeah, it's a lot of hard work. It takes a lot of time, which I mean, you guys know better than anybody as far as that goes. But it was interesting because I did do it all myself to start, so I could appreciate that. It wasn't like I just hired somebody from the beginning and said, "Go do this, that, and the other, and get us all these different, you know, followers and that sort of stuff." But and strategically, we did, you know, things that at least Instagram used to be bigger on, like, you know, do giveaways, collaborate with other influencers, you know, do those sorts of things, you know, and we did a lot of that stuff early on. Met a lot of great people. A lot of what I consider like micro influencers here in the Springs, and some of them have moved. A lot of them seem to move back to California. I don't know why. It just seems to be a lot of the patients that we've seen that we've done work on. They've ventured back to California. But yeah, it's a process. It's a process.
Sure.
Yeah.
I lied to you. I have one more last question.
Yeah.
Where do you see the future of dentistry heading right now?
Wow. Dentistry or cosmetic dentistry?
Cosmetic.
Cosmetic dentistry specifically. I just want to make sure I answered your question correctly. Because I think it might be close in collaboration, but cosmetic dentistry is rooted in some traditional approaches, and there'll be some things that'll be really hard to change. But I think where I probably see the trends and we'll see probably developments in the areas of development of materials is probably and I'll say this kind of in a generality format, but it'll be in less invasive approaches to enhance smiles. So because one of the questions I get is, can I do veneers, but do you have to prep my teeth? Like, it's probably the other top 1% question. So right now, the hottest trend in dentistry is no prep veneers, like no preparation of the teeth. That's the hot button in cosmetic dentistry right now.
Meaning they don't have to get grinded down or anything? Okay.
So we just right over top of it, but everybody's not a candidate for that. And that's where the challenge, that's where the education comes in.
Interesting.
So I think to answer your question, I think what we're going to see is that's what the consumer wants. The consumer being that patient wants, I want less invasive, right? And even, again, geographically, right, in Colorado Springs, pretty healthy, health conscious group, right, of people or population, however you want to, you know, define that. So, you know, yeah, you know, and I think also social media has made awareness of that, because you see these people going overseas, getting their teeth ground down, or you've probably seen these videos too, right? They come back, their teeth are all ground down, they're in pain, you know, and then it scares people, and they're like, well, I want to do it, but I don't want my teeth to look like that, and I want to make sure that they're healthy, and if I need to do anything later, like, you know, it's created an awareness of that. And so, like I said, I think cosmetic dentistry will probably try to figure out ways of less invasive ways to enhance smiles. I think that would be my answer.
And what would that be, like 3D scans or?
Well, so we can
You guys
3D
already
scan
did that,
now.
right?
Yeah, we 3D scan a lot. We 3D map a lot. We, you know, so for instance, like one thing we're seeing right now is 3D printing. So,
Which allows for more customizable, precise, like very tiny.
well, it
micromillimeters.
does, but we're not sure yet. The jury's out on that. But what we're seeing is that like I said, printing is not new in dentistry, but what's happened is we're seeing it kind of shift its focus to cosmetic dentistry as far as workflows and applications, and say, okay, how can I go do that? And so what we're seeing is some less, like, if I can print things, it's cheaper. Okay, so I can charge less. And can I be more conservative? And is it something that's removable later?
And possibly
Easier.
even more precise too.
Could be. Yeah, it could be. Printing is obviously very precise, but we also have to print at scale, right? So that's the other thing, is that it takes time. And there's applications for it right now. Like we're seeing 3D printing of like temporary veneers, of like if you wanted a preview of your smile, like you could print the preview that we just kind of throw over, right? And it's totally
Wow.
reversible,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Non-destructive.
Right. Yeah. No, we don't need to numb you up. I don't need to cut your teeth. I don't need to do anything. It's just, that sort of thing. But it's not something that you can function in, right? It's something that you might be able to go take a nice picture in and and that sort of thing. But
Okay, so
but it's not functional because it's not, so there will be advances in that.
That makes sense.
There will be advances in those. So then you get back, you've got to dial that into even what are we printing? Like to that resin infiltrate that we're using. What are we using? How strong is it? Does it adhere to the teeth? We just have to be prudent when any new workflow or material comes out because we just don't know how it's going to play long term in terms of predictability. That make sense?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
This has been super insightful, Dr. Andrew. You've been great, man. This has been awesome. It's been awesome to have you've been. I don't know how we haven't had a dentist on, but this is super fascinating to me, especially a cosmetic dentist. This has been so great. This is your camera right here. Where can we find you?
Yeah, so you can find us obviously on our socials. Dr. Andrew Hall, Dr._Andrew Hall is a social for Instagram. My website's drandrewhall.com as well. You can book consults there. Like I alluded to earlier, the easiest way, or if you have questions about cosmetic dentistry, you should be able to find on all our socials. Just click a link, submit a virtual consult. I'd be happy to touch base with you, figure out if there's anything that you want to do to enhance your smile.
Awesome. This has been super insightful. Thank you for coming on. We'll have to have you on.
No problem.
See where you're at in your journey. 20 years in, you're still rocking and rolling, doing some cool things, teaching us a lot. So we really, really appreciate it, Dr. Andrew. This has been awesome.
No, thank you guys. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, this has been the COS Business Podcast, and we'll see you guys on the next one.